The desert wakes differently than the towns do. Not with the clang of iron on anvils or the sharp creak of wagon wheels, but with a hush that feels older than memory. The sun climbs slow, stretching its arms over the horizon, painting the sand with colors too holy to be trapped in words. Is fire and rose, ash and smoke, all at once. I rode into that dawn with the sound of my horse's hooves beating the earth like a heart that didn't know whether it wanted to keep going. The trail was dust, thin as smoke, and behind me there was nothing worth looking back at. I had left a town where laughter never belonged to me, where I was seen as a man half-built, too soft for some, too poor for others, too quiet for everyone. The desert didn't care. That was its kindness. I carried loneliness the way other men carried pistols, always at the hip, always ready. It wasn't a wound that bled anymore. It was scar tissue, tight and silent. By mid-morning, the heat sat heavy on my shoulders. The sky blazed down, and the land looked endless, empty except for whispers of mesquite and the thin thread of a river gone mostly dry. It was there I first saw her. Not the daughter, no. That moment was still sleeping ahead in time. It was the mother. She was bent over by the edge of the dry riverbed, a figure wrapped in faded cloth, moving slow as if her body no longer wanted to obey. One hand clutched a clay pot, the other pressed against her ribs. I thought at first she was gathering water, though the river offered little. But then she stumbled, and the pot shattered against the rock, breaking the stillness like thunder. I dismounted without thinking. My boots sank into sand that had burned all morning in the sun. She was older, lines of age carved deep into her skin, her eyes sharp even in pain. Her horse stood nearby, skittish, its front hoof caught in a cruel tangle of mesquite roots. The animal jerked panic bright in its nostrils. She had been trying to free it, though every move pulled pain across her face. I knelt first by the horse, murmuring low. My hands found the root, tugged it back slow until the hoof slid free. The horse trembled, then steadied, breathing like it had just come out of drowning. Only then did I turn to her. She had sunk to her knees, one hand still clutching her side. Her breath came in shallow pulls, but she met my gaze without fear. That struck me. She didn't look away, didn't flinch. Her eyes were old copper, strong even as her body faltered. I offered my canteen. She drank, the water spilling down her chin, wasted on the sand, but worth the loss. When I moved to help her stand, she let me, though her pride fought every inch of it. We sat for a time in the sparse shade of a twisted tree. The desert wind rattled its leaves like prayer beads. I did not speak much. Words felt heavy, and she seemed like a woman who already knew too many of them. Still, I asked gently, what happened? Her answer was silence. Then finally, soft and low, a fall. Nothing more, but I saw the truth in the way she held herself. Ribs bruised or broken. Work that should have belonged to younger bones now pressed onto hers. I stayed, not because I was brave, not because I thought myself savior, but because she reminded me of something I had nearly forgotten. My own mother, long buried under the cottonwood tree back east, who used to say, "A man who walks past a wound without stopping is not worth the dust he walks on." So I stayed until she could stand again without my arm. I fetched her another pot from her saddle, filled it with what little water the earth would give. I walked beside her until her steps were sure. Only when she was mounted did she study me again, her face unreadable. The silence between us was heavy, yet not empty. Something lived in it. Then she spoke. Her voice was rough as gravel, but the words slid into me like they'd been waiting. I heard you want a wife. My daughter is perfect for you. The desert itself seemed to still. I thought I'd misheard. The words carried neither jest nor weakness. They were delivered like a statement of fact, like the way one says the sun rises in the east or water finds the lowest ground. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. She didn't linger. She said her horse moving, slow but steady, her back straight, the clay pot swaying at her side. I watched her go until the horizon swallowed her whole, and only the silence remained. And I sat there long after, staring at the place she had been. There are moments a man never expects to live, words he never expects to hear. That morning carved itself into me like initials cut into raw wood. I had not asked for a wife, not out loud, not in prayer. Yet she had spoken as though she had heard something whispered by my very bones. The desert, in all its silence, seemed to nod in agreement. I mounted my horse again, my heart heavier and lighter all at once. Ahead lay a path I did not know, drawn not by maps, but by something older. And though I told myself I was only riding on, that her words meant little, somewhere deep inside, I already knew the truth. The story had begun. The words of the old Apache woman rode with me like a second rider, silent but impossible to ignore. I heard you want a wife. My daughter is perfect for you. I tried to set them down somewhere behind me, but they followed. Through the hush of the desert wind, through the long hours where only my horse's hooves kept time, they lingered like a song half remembered. It was 2 days before I saw her again. By then, the land had changed. Canyons like old scars, rocks stacked in solemn towers, cottonwoods bending toward a stream that whispered of life beneath the dry crust of earth. I had set camp near that stream when they appeared. The old woman came first, astride the same chestnut horse, her back straight despite the pain I knew still lived in her ribs. Behind her, walking slow but sure, came the daughter. She did not step into the world like a blaze of beauty meant to dazzle a man's eyes. No, her arrival was quieter than that, deeper, like the first stars slipping into the night sky, unnoticed until suddenly you realize they've been there all along. Her hair was dark, heavy as a river at midnight. Her face bore strength carved from living close to the earth, from sun and wind shaping it as surely as stone is shaped by water. She carried herself without apology, without the shrinking I had seen in many women pressed too long under harsh eyes. But I saw, too, a shadow in her gaze, a history of being overlooked, maybe even cast aside. Not broken, no, never broken, but shaped by disappointment, by the cruel way some men look past what is real, hunting only for shine. When the old woman dismounted, the daughter moved close, steadying her without fuss. There was tenderness in the touch, a daughter's patience born of years walking beside a mother's strength and weariness. The mother's eyes found me. "This is my daughter," she said, voice stripped of ornament. The girl's gaze rose to mine, unflinching. For a breath, I thought I saw the faintest question flicker there, not about who I was, but about whether I would prove like the others. Quick to judge, quick to turn away. I bowed my head slightly, not out of performance, but because respect was the only thing that felt right. "My name is," I told her softly, giving the name my mother had given me, a name that tasted strange here in Apache country, too sharp in the air. She did not speak, but the silence was not rejection. It was measure, as if she was weighing my presence against the wind, against the earth, against the truth her mother had already spoken. That night, I share my fire. We did not sit close. Distance hung between us, not hostile, but cautious. The flames threw shadows that danced along her features, softening the edges. I found myself watching not her beauty, though it was there, but the quiet steadiness with which she sat, as if the world could press down on her and she would not break. Her mother spoke in fragments, stories I half understood, tales of land that had once been more theirs than it was now, of seasons kinder and crueler than the one we lived in. The daughter listened without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes sometimes lifting to the stars as though to remind herself the sky still belonged to them. I wanted to speak, to say something that mattered. But what could a man like me offer? I had no wealth, no cattle to my name, only calloused hands, a weary heart, and the stubborn belief that kindness was worth more than cruelty. And so I said little. I poured water when their cups were empty. I laid extra wood on the fire so the night wouldn't chill them. I fixed the strap on their gear that had frayed. Small things, things no one else might notice, but which felt like the only truth I had to give. The daughter noticed. I could tell in the way her eyes lingered for a breath too long, not with the hunger of romance, but with a kind of curiosity, as if she wondered why a stranger would do such things without being asked, without expecting reward. Still, I kept distance, because in the hollow of my chest lived fear, fear of being seen, fear of being measured and found wanting. I had been rejected before, cast aside by a woman who wanted more than I could ever give. She had looked at me once the way a merchant looks at cheap cloth, and though her words were kind, her choice had not been. That scar still bled in ways I rarely admitted. So when the fire burned low and the old woman's breathing grew heavy with sleep, I sat staring at the embers. The daughter glanced at me once, then turned away, drawing her blanket around her shoulders. It was in that silence, under stars that seemed too many to count, that something stirred between us. Not love, not yet, but the first faint pulse of possibility. Days followed like that. I walked beside them when the sun was merciless. I carried wood when the nights were sharp with cold. Sometimes the daughter would speak, only a little, only when needed. Her voice was low, shaped like her mother's, steady as a drumbeat. She told me once about a man from the settlement who had come to their camp months ago, speaking pretty words. He had promised interest, then disappeared when another woman caught his eye. She told it simply, without bitterness, but I could see how the echo of that rejection lingered. I did not answer with pity, only listened, and I think she noticed that, too, that my silence was not emptiness but attention. There were other shadows, too, whispers in the camp when we passed through, men who looked at me with distrust, as though wondering what right I had to walk among them. An elder's eyes lingered long on me one evening, his expression unreadable. Yet the mother's words still rang like prophecy. My daughter is perfect for you. It was less suggestion than decree, though neither the daughter nor I had yet chosen anything. One evening, as we worked to mend a fence the cattle had broken, I saw her laugh. It was a small sound, quick and fleeting, a bird darting from a branch. I had told a clumsy story about my horse nearly sitting down in a creek, and for a moment her composure broke. She pressed her hand to her lips, but her eyes shone with mirth. That single laugh settled into me deeper than any kiss might have, because it was proof that she was not only strength and shadow, she was warmth, too, waiting for the right moment to slip free. When the stars came that night, I lay awake long after the fire died, my heart unsettled. Not because I had fallen for her, not yet, but because for the first time in years, I felt the ache of hope stirring. Hope is a dangerous thing for a lonely man. It can burn hotter than fire. It can cut deeper than knives. And so, though I felt her eyes on me once as dawn neared, I closed mine, pretending sleep. Because I was afraid, not of her mother, not of the tribe. Afraid of what it might mean if she truly saw me and chose not to turn away. It is a strange thing how two souls can circle each other for days, weeks even, without naming what grows between them. Like rivers running side by side, close enough to hear each other's waters, never certain if they will ever merge. That was how it was between us. The daughter and I worked near one another, walked near one another, sometimes spoke, often did not. It was not the silence of strangers. It was the silence of two people learning the shape of each other without forcing words into it. I came to know the small things. The way she paused at sunset, no matter what task was in her hands, as though the dying light itself was a prayer. The way she brushed her horse's mane slow, steady, humming something I never could quite catch. The way her hands, though scarred from work, held a gentleness that could calm even the skittish calves. And she, I think, began to notice me in turn, that I never rushed through chores, that I listened more than I spoke, that I carried weariness in my shoulders, but still found a way to offer what strength I had. It was not love yet, but it was something steadier, something deeper, building slow. One evening, as we returned from gathering wood, I saw her falter. Her foot caught on a stone, and she stumbled, catching herself quick. It was nothing, just a moment, but in her face I saw pain. I slowed my steps until we walked side by side. "You're hurt," I said gently. She shook her head. "It is nothing," but her gait betrayed her, a limp slight but real. Without thinking, I offered my arm. For a moment she hesitated, pride flaring. Then her hand rested lightly on me. Just for balance. Just for a little while. That single touch lingered long after she let go. The tribe watched us with eyes both curious and wary. Some looked with kindness, others with suspicion. Her brother, tall and sharp-eyed, confronted me one dusk as I repaired fence line. He came with shoulders squared, voice hard as stone. "You're not one of us," he said. "I know," I answered. "You will hurt her," he continued, not as a question, but as if the truth had already been decided. I set down the hammer, meeting his gaze steady. "I will not." He studied me, the silence stretching. Then he left, but not before his eyes told me he remained unconvinced. That night I lay awake, wondering if he was right. Not because I meant harm, but because life has a way of wounding even when no one intends it. One day, the daughter and I sat by the stream while her mother rested. The air smelled of cottonwood and damp earth. She spoke first, her voice low. "There was a man once," she said, eyes on the water. I said nothing, only waited. He came with fine clothes, promises. He said he would take me to the town, to a better life. My heart wanted to believe him, but he left, just like smoke. I learned then, promises are wind. Her words cut soft, but I felt the weight of them. I did not rush to fill the silence. At last I said, "I know what it is to be left behind." She turned, eyes questioning. "There was a woman," I admitted, voice quiet. "She wanted more than I could give. I was not enough for her. Not rich enough. Not fierce enough. Not enough." The confession tasted bitter, but freeing. For a long moment, she only looked at me. Then she said, "You listen. Most men do not." It was the smallest praise, yet it sank deep, warmer than sunlight. The mother spoke one evening, her voice carrying across the fire. "Love is not fire," she said, staring into the flames. "It does not burn quick and then die. Love is earth. It waits. It carries. It holds." Her words pressed into the quiet, heavy and holy. The daughter's eyes flicked toward me, just for a breath, before she looked back at the fire. Then came the night of sickness. I had been working with the cattle when I saw her stumble, hand clutching her brow. By the time I reached her, she was pale, breath quick and shallow. Fever had wrapped itself around her. We carried her to the shade of the lodge, where her mother tended to her with herbs and cool cloths. I sat outside, helpless, listening to her low murmurs through the canvas walls. Hours passed. My chest felt heavy as stone. I prayed in silence, though prayer had long been a stranger to me. At last, her mother emerged, weary but calm. "She will mend," she said, "but she will need watching." I nodded, and I kept watch. Through the night, I sat near, fetching water, cooling cloths, waiting through her restless dreams. At one point her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. She whispered something in Apache, words I could not understand. But her hand reached weakly toward mine. I took it, held it until sleep claimed her again. That night changed something, not only for her, but for me. I realized then I could not bear to lose her. Not the quiet strength, not the small laugh, not the way she looked at the sunset as though it were sacred. It was no longer just companionship. It was something deeper, undeniable. The next morning, the old mother found me by the dying fire. She studied me with eyes that seemed to see straight through the skin, down to the soul. "You stayed," she said simply. "I cannot leave," I answered. She nodded once, as if this was the answer she had expected. "Now you know. Love is not chosen. It is revealed." Her words struck like a bell in the silence. Still, shadows lingered. There was talk in the settlement of men wanting to drive the Apache off the land. Whispers of greed, cattlemen hungry for more space, miners eyeing the hills. Trouble brewing like storm clouds on horizon. I found myself standing not only beside her, but before her people. Small acts of loyalty, helping repair, guarding the herd at night, became quiet statements. Yet still I wondered if they would ever accept me, if she would ever truly see me as hers. One night, we walked together under the endless spread of stars. She was still recovering, her steps slow, so I kept pace with her. After a long silence, she said, "You are not like the others." "Because I am clumsy?" I asked, trying to coax a smile. Her lips curved faintly. "Because you stay." Her words sank deep into the marrow of me. Because you stay. I wanted to reach for her hand then, but I did not. Not yet. The moment was fragile, and I feared to break it. Instead, we stood side by side, looking up at the sky. And though no promises were spoken, I felt it, the pull between us, no longer just possibility, but inevitability. The rivers were drawing closer. Storms do not always announce themselves with thunder. Sometimes they creep like shadows, quiet but certain, until the air itself feels heavier, and every heart knows what is coming. The whispers of trouble that had drifted through camp became truth. A group of settlers, cattlemen, and drifters with hungry eyes rode near the Apache lands, muttering about grass and water and unused space. They came not with kindness, but with the arrogance of men who believe the world belongs only to them. I saw them first while riding the herd near the river. 5 men, rifles slung, faces set with that cruel look I had come to know too well. They did not fire, not that day, but their message was clear in every sneer, every glance toward the land. When I told the others, unease spread like wildfire through the camp. Mothers drew their children close. The younger men reached for bows and rifles. The elders' faces were grave. Her brother stood tall, eyes fierce. "They will come again," he said. His gaze flicked to me, sharp, measuring. "And when they do, will you stand with us, stranger?" I felt the weight of his challenge. For a moment, doubt pressed against my ribs, the same old doubt that had followed me like a shadow. But then I saw her. She stood a few paces back, watching me, her dark eyes steady, waiting, not urging, not pleading, simply waiting to see the truth of me. "I will stand," I said. My voice came quiet, but did not shake. Her brother studied me a moment longer, then nodded once. No words of trust, but something in his stance softened. The days that followed felt stretched thin, the air humming with tension. At night, I lay awake, listening for hoofbeats that might come from beyond the ridge. And in those nights, I thought often of her, of the way her hand had reached for mine in fever, of the way she had said, "Because you stay." I realized then that this was not just about land, not just about cattle or rivers. It was about her, about proving that I would not walk away when storms came, that I would not vanish like smoke, leaving her to face the fire alone. The clash came at dawn. The riders returned, more this time, near a dozen. Their voices carried sharp across the land as they demanded the Apache leave, claim the grass, threaten with rifles. The tribe stood firm. Men and women alike gathered, armed with what they had, eyes hard with resolve. I took my place among them. I had no grand speech, no bold gesture. I only gripped the rifle in my hands and prayed my courage would not falter. The leader of the riders, a broad man with a scar down his cheek, laughed when he saw me. "So they've taken in strays now?" he jeered. "A lone drifter playing husband to the savages?" The word struck, sharp as knives. But I held my ground. "This land is theirs," I said, my voice carrying though my chest shook inside. "If you want it, you'll have to take it over my body first." The laughter died then. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. He saw I meant it. The standoff thickened. Fingers twitched on triggers. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then it broke. A shot cracked the morning silence, and chaos spilled like water from a broken jug. The riders surged. The tribe answered. Shouts, hoofbeats, smoke, gunfire. The air split apart with violence. I do not remember each moment clearly, only fragments. Her brother firing swift and sure from the ridge. An elder shouting for the women to fall back. My horse rearing beneath me as I tried to block the riders from breaking through. One man came at me, wild-eyed, rifle raised as a club. I met him with desperate strength, the clash jarring through my bones. The fight was raw, brutal, not skill, just survival. I don't know how long it lasted before he fell, groaning, clutching his arm. Through the smoke, I saw her. She was not cowering in the lodge as I had feared. She was there, bow in hand, standing tall beside her mother. Her arrow flew true, striking the ground before the riders, forcing them back. Her eyes burned with fire, not fear. In that moment I knew she did not need saving. She needed standing beside. And so I fought, not as a hero, not as a savior, but as her equal, as a man who had finally found something worth giving himself to. At last, the riders broke, whether from wounds, from fear, or from the sheer iron of Apache resolve. They turned tail, retreating into the rising sun. Their leader spat curses, but did not return. Silence followed, broken only by the harsh breathing of the living, the low cries of the wounded. The battle was done. When it was over, I found her in the clearing, bow still in hand. Dirt streaked her face, hair tangled, but her eyes were alive, burning with the kind of strength that makes the world itself seem smaller. For a long moment, we only looked at each other. Then slowly, she lowered her bow, and I lowered my rifle. Her mother stepped forward, gaze heavy with meaning. "You stood," she said. Her voice was not surprised, only certain. "Now you belong." She turned to her daughter, then back to me. "Not by debt, not by force, by choice, by tradition." The tribe gathered, some nodding, some watching in silence. The air was thick with something older than words, older than even the land we stood on. The daughter stepped closer. Her eyes searched mine, not with hesitation, but with truth. "I see you," she said quietly, "and I choose." Her hand lifted, hovering. I reached, not grasping, but offering. Our hands met in the middle, fingers twining slow, reverent. It was not a claim, not a possession. It was a covenant, born not of fire, but of earth, as her mother had said. Solid, patient, eternal. The days that followed were quieter, though the memory of the clash remained. The riders did not return. The land seemed to breathe easier. We worked side by side, mending fences, tending herds, gathering water. Ordinary tasks. Yet each one carried the weight of something sacred. At night, we sat by the fire, sometimes speaking, often not. And in the silence, I felt whole for the first time in my life. For all my years of wandering, of loneliness, of rejection, I had found not just a woman, not just a people, but a place where my presence mattered. And so I tell you this truth, here by the fading firelight. Love does not arrive like a thunderstorm. It does not tear the sky with lightning. It comes like dawn on the desert, slow and steady, unnoticed until suddenly the whole world is bathed in its light. It is not fire. It is earth. It waits. It carries. It holds. And if you have listened this far, maybe some part of you knows this truth too. Maybe you have carried loneliness like I once did. Maybe you have wondered if anyone will ever see you, not for what you lack, but for what you quietly are. If this tale touched your heart, let it remind you, there is someone out there who will see you, who will choose you. Now, friend, if this story lingered in your chest, I ask you kindly, like this tale, share it with another wanderer who might need it, and tell us in the comments below, from where in this wide world are you listening tonight?